God, did you just see that guy walk right in front of my picture? How rude, sir.
So we're out here looking for photographic locations that either work today or are reference shots for another trip. We're actually across the state border from Maine in New Hampshire, and I'm not going to try to murder it. I'll just put the place that we're at traveling along down here. We got this cool covered bridge in the background. I'm trying to make some stuff work. Hopefully some clouds will move over and into my frame and I'll get a shot. If I did, here's that shot now. So for this first composition, photographing along the Kancamagus Highway, we found this cool old covered bridge, which a lot of people apparently know where it is. I had to wait several minutes for the crowds to clear out to get two clear shots. So the intent with taking two shots of the same location is to have one exposed correctly for the shadows and the other exposed correctly for the highlights. So you've got the highlight exposure on the left and the shadows exposure on the right. We're going to take those two exposures into Photoshop and blend them together to give us a better dynamic range photograph to work with. This is that photograph. I'm not exactly pleased with the way this turned out, but while you're on a trip, especially a road trip, and you have limited time at the locations that you are attempting to photograph, you have to deal with the weather that you have and the lighting conditions that you are presented with. So on the left, we have the image as it came out of Photoshop in its full glory. There's a lot of things I like. There's some things that I don't like. There's a distracting tree branch coming into the frame about midway up top. So I took that back into Lightroom and decided to do some crop work there. I'm not exactly thrilled with the cropping because it takes out the top of this tree that you see in the cropped image. Other than that, I think I prefer the crop better, but I could probably do some masking to get rid of that tree that is infringing on the image in this final image. So this is my final choice. Which one would you prefer, the cropped or the uncropped photograph? Let me know. Let's talk about this. I think it'd be a great discussion. How would you deal with this in the field when you're on a trip? I would really love to get back to this location and photograph this bridge in better light, either early morning or late afternoon. Some weather would be quite awesome at this location. A little bit of mist, maybe some rolling fog. And these are Shelley's takes or compositions from that beautiful covered bridge along the Kancamagus. She came up with some unique compositions, and then we kind of shot the same one here, of course. But that first one was really nice. I loved the way she laid out the leading lines and the composition overall. This is kind of cool. It is the river. It looks like old glass, old colored glass. I love the texture of the water and the way it reflects the light, and you can still make out the riverbed bottom of those boulders. And here's another one of the side profiles of the bridge. I like that as well. Here's the main takeaway. When doing a trip like this, spend as much time visiting the friends and family that you are there to see. Here we are as a group, including Corbin. We had a great time with the Hintons. We look forward to doing it again. Next time, maybe we'll limit our locations even further. I'm so glad that Chris was there filming some behind-the-scenes footage. I cannot wait to get together with Chris and Susanna again down the road.
Corbin, come here. Come here. Look at this. See, what we have here is we have the Niesens in the wild. Look at them. Look at them work. They're talking to the covered bridge and saying things like, yes, show me passion. Show me love. Show me happiness. Now give me drama. And Craig just left. He just gave up.
So how are these rocks formed around this?
All right, well, Corbin, I'm going to tell you. All this rock around in here is granite. So it was formed, it's an igneous rock. So it was formed from volcanic material under the earth, like magma. It didn't make it to the surface because if it made it to the surface, you'd get basalt like you see in Hawaii. But because it was still underground, you get these rocks that have crystals in it because it cools really slowly. And you get larger crystals that way. So that's what all this rock is granite. But the reason this area looks like this is because 10,000 years ago, this whole area was covered with a mile thick of ice. It was a glacier covering the whole area. And when that started to melt, you got all this meltwater coming through here. And this would have been solid rock at one time, back in the 10,000 years ago. But what the water did was it found the weakest point, which would be the fractures in the rock where it breaks. And that's why you get these gorges like this. That's where the fractures in the rock were. And in some areas, I have a picture of it, there's what they call a pothole. And that's where the water would swirl in one area, and it would kind of bore a hole down. And the pothole that you can see is in the gorge down there, and it's been weathered out on one side, so it's only half the pothole now. So it's a really interesting geologic area here. So, but that's how that formed. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
You just got Geosplaining.
So we hiked back along this creek bed to this gorgeous waterfall. I'm not going to share the name. It's very easy to find anyway. There's really a couple compositions back there, and what I was going for from this location was I wanted the waterfall with no people along the railing. So once I found my composition, I made 6 frames, making sure that everyone that was in a frame moved between frames. I was looking for openings where I could take the frames into Photoshop and paint out or mask out any people that were actually in them, thus giving me the photograph that I wanted with no one in it. A more natural or earlier in the day photograph. I bet if you got there early in the day or really late in the day, you'd be fine. But this is one technique that you can use when you're in the field and it's busy. So when I got home and started processing the images, I realized I only needed 2 of the frames that I shot. The point or moral of this story is, take as many frames or activations of the shutter as you feel you need in the field. You never know how much information or how little you'll actually need when you start working the photograph. So once I took all the frames into Photoshop, I did an auto align on them, because they're not perfectly aligned, even though I was on a tripod for this. Once I did the auto align, you'll notice there's some gray areas around here after I did the auto align. The people are gone. I've masked them out. This is the image as finished in Photoshop. Now I'm going to show you what I did over in Lightroom. I went in and cropped in to get rid of the areas that were gray on the master or negative at this point from Photoshop. So this is my final image from that waterfall. No people, just the effects of man with the handrail in there. I love the water blur. I love the light. This is probably my favorite photograph from our time in Maine. Tell me what you think. Let's talk about this one. Here are Shelley's takes on that same waterfall. She's in a slightly different location. Her trick was to crop in the field to eliminate as much of the handrail as possible, thus reducing the chance of people being there. I love this photograph where she zoomed in tight to the top of the falls. So I'm going to leave you this week with a time-lapse from a place where Shelley made 2 panos that were featured in last week's episode. If you haven't yet done so, please go check out that episode. I'll leave a link up above and in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.